Hey everyone, my name's Lindsay and I'm here with my good friend
Ian.
and we are going to show you back bends, camel, bridge, and wheel. Let's get started. Let's start in camel.
Great.
So for camel, the foundation of the pose here is Ian's knees. Knees and his toes tucked under. His knees are hips distance apart. He's got his hands on his low back, pushing his pelvis forward. That's the foundation. Knees, pelvis, feet. With his spine, he's lifting up and away from his base. Ian, will you show us hands on your heels?
Yeah.
Another variation Ian can take with either toes untucked or tucked under is hands to his heels. The same dynamics apply here. He's pressing his pelvis forward and he's lifting his heart up away from his base. What Ian isn't doing is leaning his whole body back. What Ian is doing is pressing his hips forward, lifting his heart up. So the mechanics of this pose are so similar to bridge. Ian, hit us with bridge. We just changed the orientation of Ian's body. So much still applies. His base, his feet now are hips distance apart. He's got his core on navel to spine and he's pressing his hips to the sky. Ian can also take a variation of this shape by interlacing his fingers behind his back. Whether he's interlaced or not, Ian is pressing his arms down into the mat to create more lift. Then, with his chin, he's lifting and pulling away from his neck. Ian's got some space here under his neck, and that comes from his chin moving away from his sternum bone and from the back of his skull pressing down. Ian, will you show us what it looks like to lose that space in the back of your neck? His chin went to his throat and his cervical spine pressed flat towards the earth. And now bring back that curve again. Let's see how this applies in camel pose. In camel, in bridge, and in wheel, Ian is following the line of his back bend from his tailbone up through his cervical spine. If Ian were to drop his head back completely, he would crunch his neck. If he were to look up and forward, he would be flattening the curve of his cervical spine. We want our back bends to move from the base of our spine to the top of our neck. Ian, will you draw back into wheel? Mm-hmm. For wheel pose, Ian's feet are hips distance apart and he's grounding down into the earth. His pelvis is pressing forward up to the ceiling. Same action he has in bridge, same action he has in camel. With Ian's arms, he's hugging elbows towards one another. No, they're not gonna touch. It's an action cue. With his shoulder blades, he's gliding them down his back and then pressing his sternum bone to the wall behind him. Ian, come down to bridge pose. Bridge is an amazing shape to take on the path to wheel. And other wheel variations look like hands by your ears and pressing to the crown of your head from bridge. Ian's resting some of his weight in his hands. From there, if you want some more challenge, he can hover an inch off the mat, 2 inches, all the way up. Ian, do you want more?
Yeah.
Lift a leg to the sky, Ian, and spread your toes. And then come down. All right, Ian, let's look at some variations in foundation and how we can modify the shape. Let's start in bridge pose. One common misalignment that can happen in this shape is for feet to come way apart from one another. Nice. What that does on one aspect of the anatomy is puts pressure on the right and left side of the sacrum, which can also add to a crunching in the low back. By Ian bringing his feet to hips distance and spiraling his inner thighs down towards the floor, he creates space in his low back. Now, a common misconception about back bends is that they all happen from the low back. Ian is actually lengthening his low back as he presses his thighs and chest up. Will you come into wheel? I think we'll be able to see it really well from there. In his back bend, he's pressing his thoracic spine, the top of his back, the upper section, right below his neck. He's pressing that into his body, and he's lengthening his low back. From here, another variation to show is oftentimes when people set up for the press up into wheel, they bring their hands too far apart. Go ahead and come up there to the best of your ability. That puts a lot of weight on the hands and expects a lot of the muscles of the shoulders and back. Come down, Ian. Set your hands up shoulders distance apart or a little bit wider. Now this works for Ian, and for some bodies, you might need to go a little bit wider to get the range of motion to press up. And then Ian, do a couple of tapping your head to the floor. You can have any degree of bend in your elbows in wheel pose. What we're looking for is freedom and expression in the spine, stability in the core, and length in the low back. Thank you so much for watching this episode. If you've got questions about bridge, wheel, or what's the other one?
Camel.
Camel, drop us a comment below. We'll see you soon.